The only way you're going to learn is to tweak it and change it. Sometimes it'll break your heart, but more times than not, you'll come out ahead by what you learn. And there's such a thing as a signature out there. You can walk through that room right there, and you can tell, well, those guys that have reached that point, even though their handwriting is not on that mount, they carry a signature on there. That their peers and other people that respect what they do see that in every mount that they do. Whether it's a whitetail, whether it's a bird, whether it's a fish, they carry that signature. And the only way you're going to get that signature is by exploring. Because if you don't change anything on here, every mount you do is going to be the same thing. You're never going to get over that hill. You're not even going to begin to walk up that hill. Like when I mount animals that's coming into my shop from Illinois, you know, most of them probably 75% of those animals are 2-3-year-old animals. Okay, they ain't reached their prime yet, but still some of them carry, you know, nice horns and stuff like that. But they really play in that realm of norm. But then when I start working on the deer from South Texas on some of these private ranches, to where they don't kill deer of that age structure, they kill deer that's 7, 8, 9 years old, the ones that's going downhill, they start killing those. Now those animals are different, okay? It's just like a 20-year-old kid and a 60-year-old man. There's a hell of a lot of difference in them, okay? The same rule plays. But now what we've got to understand is that even though it's a 7, 8-year-old buck to where his horns is actually starting to droop because they're getting so much mass to them, you know, that the gravity is pulling them down during the growing stages in velvet and stuff like that. That sculptor didn't know you was going to put a 7, 8, 9-year-old buck out there, you know, with 4-inch circumference on him, on his horns. He didn't know that. He sculpted this mannequin for the realm of norm. What's going to sell the most for him? So he can get his money back for his time he spent sculpting this. So he sculpts in the realm of norm. So when you mount an animal, you got to take that into consideration and realize, no matter what that deer looked like when you skinned it, you're going to have to go back to the realm of norm to make everything fall in place to this animal, beginning with the antler set. And the thing about it is, if you buy these products and it makes you a corner, and you don't catch that corner until you tuck your skin in there, and then as a finishing practice, you got to get in and you got to blend in that corner. It's going to create you a problem because you got skin, then you got this stretch of all game or sculpto in there that's going to give you a mirror finish, and then you got your septum. So you got 3 different textures going into that nostril. You ain't never going to pull it off, honey. It just ain't going to happen. So the best way to do it is to correct it before you even put the skin on there. Get your septum in there where it's supposed to be, eliminate the corner, and then if you're not satisfied your ramp ain't long enough or it ain't full enough, then go in there and rebuild that long before you ever lay the skin on it. Do your finishing before you ever mount the deer. And do it when you can hold that nose in your hand, you know, because you cut that nose right off and do everything from the back side. You can hold it in your hand right there. It's a lot easier to work on. So, a nose has 3 reference points on it. Okay, you got the top of the nose pad where the hair starts. As a general rule, here we're going to go by whitetail. On a whitetail, that nose pad rises back on the nostril opening about 3/4 of the way back. Okay, I'm talking about right here. If you lay that nose pad on top of this nose, the top of the nose pad where the hair starts should ride about 3/4 of the way back of the nostril opening. Or it should correspond with your Jacob's gland, which is down in the nostril. Okay, so that will be reference point number 1. You got to nail that one first. Then you come down to the bottom of the nose. Now where you've got that skin before you've tucked your lip line, you get to looking. The nose pad makes a corner right here. Okay, then it comes down to this point right here, and then it corners again and flashes out. Y'all remember that on the skins? Elk's the same way. Mule deer's the same way. all right? It comes down and then flares back out. Where it makes that second corner is a reference point that needs to be on your bottom lip. Unless he's doing a fleeman or open mouth, you know, reaching for a cracker, cookie, or whatever. But in a relaxed position, like you're mounting them in there, you should see no flare out on the front of that nose pad. Don't use inner mouth material, in other words, to make a nose pad. If it ain't fitting, then take your rasp and lift this area here up. Okay? Don't be scared about it. You ain't gonna run it. Rasp that up. So I'm real notorious about mounting my deer and then incorporating him onto a base that I'm making after I've done mounted the deer. But I always double check my levelness and make sure that my eyes is where I wanted them set, you know, when I had them on the stand. But once I have that level, the next thing I do is my antler set. Going with the 2 rules of thumb that we've been over and over and over and over again. We did them in the seminar. We've been doing them in every critique out there. The antler set. Make sure that your antler flow is to the realm of norm. The realm of norm being that don't pay any attention to what the skull is, your skull cap. It don't have nothing to do with the price of tea in China. Don't pay no attention to that skull. Because you ain't never going to, the judge ain't never going to see that skull. It's going to be wrapped in clay. It's going to be wrapped in hide. You ain't never going to see it. But what I am going to see is what your antlers is doing out here. And the 2 rules of thumb I like to go by is I like to lay a straight edge from the back corner of his nostril, top of his tear duct. That should coincide with the bottom of his antler burr. Everybody get that one? Then I take my straight rule. I lay it on the brim of his nose. Straight line right up his brim of his nose, right up, and you got to do this from a side profile. You lay it on the brim of his nose, straight line right up there, right up onto his antler. It should follow the same straight line up to his G2. Okay? So once you've got that in position, what that does is that gets your distance between your bottom of your antler burr and where the neck muscles start. If you cook that antler forward, you're increasing that distance. Now you try to fill that in with an ear butt. You've oversized your ear butt. It takes excess hide to pull up and meet that antler burr. That pulls your white patch up on you. Pull your white patch up. Next thing you know, your brisket, your armpits is out way too high. So if you bring this into the realm of norm that the sculptor forces you to do, then everything should coincide all the way down. And once I get my antler set, next thing I want to do is I want to look at where my skull is coinciding with the back side of my brow area here. In other words, if I've got an inch of foam on each side of my skull plate right here, I know that my forehead ain't going to fit. It can't possibly fit. If you've got an inch, inch and a half, 2 inches difference between your skull plate and what the foam is out here, your eye sockets are going to be up too high. Right? So when you set your skull plate on there, you've got to make this coincide with your skull plate. That's why some of them deer in there, it looks like the horns have been shoved down on the top of their head, is because the difference between the skull plate and what they were using as their mannequin, the difference was so wide that everything just bunched up on them. Okay? It'll cause you shrinking around your antler burrs. It'll cause lifting on the back side of your eyelids. You won't be able to have that good angle coming down. Your angle on the back will be actually higher than what the reference point 2 on the eyelid is. Okay? So you got to make that correspond. So that's what the rasp comes into play. Okay? I don't have a set of antlers here. We did that last year, if you remember. We changed that without having to cut the head off and split it, take a pie-shaped wedge out of it. We could actually do it from the outside. You know, and I'm talking about if you've got a 1/2 inch, maybe possibly 3/4 of an inch or something like that difference. You can get by with doing it from the outside instead of having to do it from the inside. Okay? Once I get my antler set, now I'm seeing my difference up here. However much access I have is going to determine how deep I'm going to embed my skull plate is a 1/2 inch inside the outside of my, or inside my foam here. I'm going to have to embed my out orbits deeper because I'm going to end up having to remove this to fit my skull cap. So I'm going to have to inset my eyes. Another thing you need to remember is that a deer, 24 hours a day, somebody's trying to eat his ass. Okay? So that's what I was talking about. You know, you got to roll the ears to where he can hear from behind. The same thing with his eyes. He has a slotted pupil. It runs this way so that he can see everything that his nose doesn't hide in front of him. And he, at the same time, he should be able to see everything that his earbuds don't hide behind his head. He has that ability to see, just like this right here. Now, if you roll your eyes forward too much, you start getting that prey animal look to them. Then what happens is when you bring your skin over, when you look behind the deer, after you've got everything mounted and his eyes tucked and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden you look behind him and you look past his, right down the edge of his earbud, and you look and you can't see glass eye, or you can't see that pupil in there, that means he can't see back here no more. That ain't the way he was built. You've got to set that eye, instead of having this frontal view, he's got to have more of a flat view so that he can see back here as well as he can in the front. So, first thing I'm going to do to get my signature of eyes is I'm going to try to get more of that flat profile in that socket. And at the same time, we'll hit a little bit about this. If you're going to use white banded eyes, and I'm not saying this to scare y'all off, because just like what we was saying, if you don't try something, you ain't even going to learn from it. But if you're going to use white banded eyes, then go with the idea that a deer's eyes roll on the same basis as what ours does. Okay? So if I'm standing here watching the TV or whatever, and somebody says, "Hey, Jody," like that right there, my eyes ain't going to roll this way. They're going to roll this way, ain't they? And at the same time as my eyes is rolling, my head's going to be turning. And if my ears could move like a deer's ears can, my ears is going to be rolling to catch as much sound from where I thought I just heard it from, right? So you got a fluid motion thing happening with 3 different parts of his body: his eyes, his ears, and his head. So here I've got a deer that has heard something over here. His head's turning. I want my ears to roll to correspond with what his head's doing, and I also want his eyes rolling the same way. That's the natural movement of things. But so many times you see a deer turn to the right and his eyes are looking over here. Try to do that yourself for a minute. Try to turn your head one way and roll your eyes the other way. See how that works for you. Is a deer not any different? You got to think about this. You're pretty talented anyway. Talking about this also, I see more heads in there this year than I did last year, where guys is actually just like the bull moose. So, whoa, whoa. He's doing that. I seen some deer in there. You know, they're rubbing their antlers. They got the heads tweaked a little bit. Not only does an animal move his eyes this way, but his eyes move this way. In other words, when he crooks his head this way, the eyes still want to stay level with the ground. So you got to play this game along with this game. Folks, that can get awful complicated to a simple human's mind. And using flat surfaced eyes like we're doing, it can almost be an impossible thing. for you guys that struggle with it in the master's division or whatever, my best advice is eliminate the flat surface on your eye and start making a round ball out of it. Put your all game in there, roll around on the table, make it a ball. Then when you cut into your eye orbit here, make it a socket, a round socket. Now when you put that round eye in there, now you get the exact movement of what a deer can do that a flat surface on that eye will not allow you to do. And that's why when you're trying to do it on your mount and you just struggle and struggle, it's because it ain't gonna work. You're gonna have to make the round ball and the socket effect. But the thing about it is, when you do that, man, I mean, lights will be coming on in your head that you never imagined. And the simplicity of it is an end result. Yeah, okay. Blow your mind. Oh, and this is an 1.25" bit. This fits a 32mm eye to the T. Okay, you're going to have to go a little bit bigger if you're using 34mm. How many of you use 34mm in your shop? 32s? Pretty much everybody. Yeah, that's the way I am. I mean, like I said, this is 1.25" bit. So what I'm doing, I'm changing the angle. I want it a little deeper on the top. Okay, now going with this rotation, these actually have the you know, your scleral band on the back corner. You know, that it's like your pupil is kind of egg shaped. Okay, so you want the pointed side. That will be the back side of your eye. Don't ever use the pointed side for the front side. It won't work. Now, if I want this head, if I'm using pre-rotated eyes or even these eyes here, you know, I'm going to show the white in the front corner of this eye over here. Okay, so I'm going to want to tweak my bit here a little bit because I'm going to want it deeper on this side than I do the other side. Okay, so I've eliminated that kind of a forward look to him now. I've got more of a flat side profile to the. Okay, I've got my antlers set. I got my eye orbits cut according to what my skull plate is. Okay. So anyway, most of the time I've already got my tear duct and stuff like that cut. And for you beginners that are cutting your lip lines and cutting your tear ducts, do not use hacksaw blades. Do not use Dremel tools. Just use what I made my own tool. I took a piece of turkey leg wire, the heavier stuff. Okay, I put it in a wooden handle. I took it to the anvil and I mashed the end of it. Made it look like a spoon. Okay, but then when you turn it up and down, it's wedge. Okay, then I took it to the grinder and I put a sharp edge on it, a cutting edge, so that when I cut my lip line, okay, I cut it first, then I make another pass that goes in a little deeper. Each time I make a pass on that lip line, I'm compressing that lip line open. There's no material. I'm not cutting any material out of it. It's just compressing it open. Foam has a memory. It wants to come back like it was to a certain extent. That can be used as your lock. When I'm embedding my eyes, I use potter's clay more so than my clear clay. One thing, clear clay is a whole lot more expensive, and your potter's clay is softer. So if you need to push that eye in, it takes less effort. You know, line it up, tweak it, whatever you want to do. And while I'm talking about the lip line too, just like with the tear duct, when you cut that tear duct, before you put the skin on there, incorporate a roll of clay. I use a roll of clay about, well, the length of my tear duct, plus about the same diameter as what a pencil is. And I just lay that right in front of that tear duct. When I tuck my skin on there, that clay is waiting right there at the front opening of that tear duct. I've got my hide paste in my tear duct. I tuck my skin in there. And then I take my thumb, and I don't mash the clay, but I transfer that clay right over that tear duct. So it's a locking tool, plus it gives me the muscle structure. That's what you'll see in those photos and
Backwards and those.
yeah, yeah. And you got to understand, you know, by looking at a skull, there you go. When you look at a deer's skull, there's no hole there in his skull for a tear duct. It's just a slight indentation.
Right.
You know, so, but now we're working with distorted skin and stuff, so we go ahead and cut the slots and we cut them in there. But you try to replicate what the deer actually had. And that was just the inside of that tear duct is stuck into that little depression. And then you got to, excuse me, the muscle actually just lays over the front of it. So that's what you try to replicate. So, but at the same token, I like to use clay around my lip line. There again, you can use it as a locking tool. It gives you the roundness. And the thing about it is when you all get to the point to where, and I don't remember what the guy was that I accused him of sculpting his deer out of wood. Is he in here? I thought he was just sitting in here a while ago. Yeah.
Maybe.
You'll notice it when you walk around there, you'll see this deer that is, they ain't a hair out of place. I mean, he has just, I mean, it looks like he's carved. There's not a hair sticking out anywhere on that deer. He's just groomed. Okay? And he got, you know, we talked about it. They ain't like that. The hair grows out of him straight out. Okay? Around his eyes, his lip line, the brim of his nose and stuff like that. On his forehead and stuff. The hair does not grow flatten right up to his skin. It comes out. That's why, you know, when you're mounting deer commercially, you know, your customer brings that deer in, you know, and you're talking about, yeah, man, that's a pretty deer, you know, he's got good hair on him and stuff, and going to make a beautiful mount. You get him skinned, you get him put back together, and all of a sudden you see all these tiger stripes all over his neck where he's been fighting and shit because you changed the pattern of the hair. You're grooming him down. Now every little mark on him shows, right? So the trick to it is to bring that hair back. When you get to that point in your competition career to where you're ready to start raising that hair up and putting it in a natural position, then's when you start putting together animals, whether it's, there again, even your life-size animals, your bears, your foxes and stuff like that, this back brushing thing, fluffing them up, will completely change the way that animal looks. Back brushing is so important, people. And there's certain parts of a deer. His forehead, number one. If you don't back brush that forehead, you have no idea what you're even looking for or what it's supposed to be. You've got to back brush it, and once you back brush it, you'll go, whammo, Steve. Yeah, I get it. Everything will be laid out for you. From that point on, you just arrange the hair to where it's just everything sharp and crisp right there. Same way with this brisket. If you don't back brush a brisket, you got no idea where to go with it. It will not tell you anything. Back brush it, and then you start to see that line appear, and then you bring it back together in the middle. Then you get that sharp, crisp line up and down his straight line up and down his brisket. Okay? And the same way with the eyes and stuff. When you go to back brushing these animals and you start seeing that softness come out on them, you'll sell yourself. You'll sell yourself. And for you beginners again, here we're going to go step back. If a deer is in a relaxed position, he's got his chin basically kind of level, which that's another subject too. A deer does not stand here like this. They don't do it. A deer is no different than a coyote or anything else out there. A deer does not stand here and try to see around his nose. What happens is his nose goes down, and that way when he's looking, there's nothing in front of his eyes. And it'll really show up when you start doing foxes, coyotes, bobcats, and stuff like that. If you don't change these mannequins when you set them up to mount them, and that bobcat sitting there, his chin's level with the ground, when you set his eyes, you'll never pull off that predator look on him. It will never happen until you drop his chin, and then you set the eyes, and then everything becomes what the Indians used to call the skin walking look. Something about an animal of prey that kind of makes you, they just got that look. Well, a deer does the same thing. He doesn't walk around with his chin level all the time. He walks around, his nose is down so that he can see over. No interference there. But anyway, but going back to the levelness of the pupil, you level, if the deer is just like this right here, his eyes is going to be level with the ground. Okay? As he brings his nose down, he wants to be able to see all that he can see, so his eyes stay level as he drops his nose to the ground. Eyes stay pupil. Oh, pupils stay level. All right? Now, but when he starts to raise his nose up, that rule never doesn't apply anymore. It can work both ways. Either his pupils can follow the flow of his snout, or they can try to look level. Okay? So always remember that. Above ground, you can play with them. Below ground, level, his nose going below plane, they still got to stay level. And it's kind of funny because here several years ago I mounted up a deer, took to the World Show there, and he was reaching up to get a persimmon. And I mean, before I even, well, where I did come up with the idea, I'd been out there deer pen, you know, I was feeding the deer or whatever, you know, and I got them. Well, I was trying to take pictures of them, so I had a camera in one hand, cookie in the other hand. Okay, so they come over, they start walking over to this cookie I got in my hand. I got it, you know, up above their head, a couple feet, you know. So anyway, he comes walking up there, I get the camera ready and everything else, and just about the time he gets up there to start to go for that cookie, and I was wanting to see what his pupils was going to do, okay? But every time he'd walk over to me, he was looking at that cookie. But then when he would get up there where I wanted to take the picture, he didn't look at the cookie no more. He was looking at me. So I never could get the reference that I wanted for that position. And then it started making sense to me, because all I'd ever heard in my taxidermy career is that if you've got a scent gland or whatever in front of this deer, he has to be focused on that scent gland. He don't have to be so focused on that scent gland. Because it's just like you sitting down and eating a bowl of Cheerios. You reach over on the table and you pick up your newspaper, all right? You unfold it, you start reading. Okay. First thing you do is look down at your bowl of Cheerios. You stick your spoon in there, right? You know where I'm going with this, don't you? Okay, you got to find the bowl. You got to find your spoon. But once you get that spoon loaded with Cheerios, do you watch it go in your mouth? How are you ever going to get your newspaper read? A deer is the same way. He don't have to watch food go in his mouth. And if there's somebody standing beside him with the camera that he don't understand what's taking place, he knows where that cookie is. He'll be watching the camera. Okay? Well, however deep I set my eye, that meant the thickness, what the thickness of my upper eyelid was going to be. In other words, if you've got your, you know, the back side of your eye socket here, and you embed your eye deep, and your brow area is sticking out that much, unless you remove that material, you're going to have a half-inch eye thick eyelid. Ain't gonna work. So, if you change the angle of your eye, the cant, I say, cant of your eye, I guess that'd be your cant? Yeah. When you change the cant of your eye like that, that determines what the thickness of your upper eyelid and your lower eyelid is going to be. Now, when you start deciding on what you want your story to be on your mount, in the beginning, there was this deer, you know. Your eyes are going to have to tell part of that story. When you buy this mannequin and you look at it, and almost all of them will give you a crease in that front corner of your eye. I don't think I've ever bought a mannequin that had that flat surface. They all got the crease, okay? So if you decide, well, I'm going to do kind of an alert eye. If you leave that crease in the front corner of that eye, you're wrong. Because an alert eye does not have a crease in the front of it. Okay? That bony tip cannot move in and out. It stays the same. So whether it's a relaxed eye or whether it's an alert eye, it stays the same. What determines whether he has a crease in the front is what happens above and below that valley. Right? So if he's doing a relaxed eye, that means everything above and everything below kind of starts coming together. And as everything comes together, then that crease appears. But the depth hasn't changed, okay? If he brings it alert, then everything becomes tight. There's no crease in there anymore. To the point that if you do an alert deer enough, the carnuckle that you was, that probably used the word there, the carnuckle that you was just talking about, it disappears. Okay? So you guys, especially you guys that are just learning, I understand that when I look at your mount, you know, and you've got this elk or deer or whatever with his eyes, you know, he's got roundness to his upper eyelids, and the pupils is in the middle. That's a alert eye. But yet when I looked in the corner, man, I'm telling you what, there's a carnuckle there that you, I mean, it's just as well defined. You can see it from 10 yards away. I get it. I know that you know what a carnuckle is, okay? But now you don't know that it goes away in that shape of an eye, okay? Let me pass a couple more pictures. When you're walking through that room, I want you to keep this in your mind. I want you to look at some of the mounts that catch your attention. I want you to look at it. I want you to try to sit there and think, okay, now what is he trying to tell here? Because you'll be able to tell the guys that's trying to tell a story and the guys that's just learning how to mount a deer. Okay? But the guys that you think is trying to tell a story, just stop a minute and try to read the book that's in front of you. And then when you walk around the center of that room right there, stop at that moose. I mean, the judgment's over with, but is anybody in here that has the moose? He's not in here? Okay. But that moose, when you look at that moose and look at his eyes, look at his nostril, look at the movement of his head, and then you can even go beyond that and look at the base and tell exactly what he's doing. The guy's calling, the moose is coming in. Been there, done that, man. I mean, I looked at that moose first time I walked by it. I mean, my hand started gripping on my recurve. You know, I was feeling from my string. It's getting ready to happen. You know, I mean, I could hear him doing it. Like that. And then when I got done looking at the moose, I looked down and I thought, shit, he's coming across the creek. The fish isn't swimming. He told the whole story. Once upon a time, all the way to the end. He told the whole story. There's no complication in it whatsoever. That's what sells. That's what sells. And everything that we're talking about, the eye movement, the nose, the lip lines, all that stuff, that's what we're talking about. The story. I'm going to take this file, looking at my skull cap, sit behind there, and I'm going to start rasping it up. And for that fella a while ago was talking about taking the pie piece shape, or the out of your center of your head, cut the head off. See, that's what I'm saying. You can bring this in with this method right here. You're closing that end. All right, to match your skull, so that when you place the skin over it, your eye openings in your skin is going to coincide with what you're creating here.